Hi there guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna Sophia if you're new here, and I post home decor and DIY content every single Sunday. And for today, I wanted to share with you guys some of the things I recently had picked up from the thrift store and transformed them into beautiful home decor. With that being said, let's get right into our first DIY project. For the first DIY project, we are going to be making a placemat display box. So if you watched my thrift with me, you'll know that I picked up this box for only $3.99 at the Goodwill. And then I also found these really beautiful placemats. So two pieces that look similar to this is all you really need for a project like this, which is really nice because the supplies are very minimal. I was really happy with this box because it is the perfect starting point for any DIY project. You're not having to undo what someone else already did, which is a lot of times the case. So it made it really easy to kind of just get in there and start working on the project. So before I actually lay the placemat down, I really wanted to stain this box just to make it a little bit more interesting, and you guys will be so proud of me. I finally switched it up and did a different stain, and just to protect the glass, because obviously you could wipe the stain off if it got on there, but just to protect it, I decided to use some blue painter's tape and just cutting around to make sure I got in every little crevice. I ended up going with Early American. I bought a really small sample just to see if I liked it, and I love this one. This might be my new favorite. And because the wood on the box was already untreated, it made it so nice. I didn't have to sand anything for once, and it was just nice to get in there. I just used a paper towel. Always want to make sure you're wearing gloves, goggles, just protect yourself when you're using stain. It is really strong and potent, so just be careful. And I just gave it one even coat all throughout the entire surface of the exterior of the box. I ended up leaving the inside untouched because I thought that looked better with the placemat. For the placemat, I ended up having to cut off just a little bit, I would say like a ½ inch from the top of the placemat so it could actually fit inside the box and I could see where it would lay. The reason I left this excess here for the time being until everything was really well glued down was because, so this is a woven placemat. So basically what that means is as soon as I start cutting the other way, all of those little reeds or whatever you want to call them, spindles, are going to start coming off of the thread. So I wanted to make sure everything was secured down first before I started trimming off the rest of it. And I'm just marking about where I'm going to need to cut eventually, but for the meantime, I'm just going to lay down some wood glue. You could use hot glue, you could use E6000, but both of these pieces are wood, so wood glue is perfect for this project. And I gave a very generous coating to the bottom of this tray of the wood glue, and then I left about a ½ inch around the perimeter, and you'll see why I did that in the end. And once the wood glue was all kind of spread around, it's just time to stick our placemat in there. And in order to keep it really secure and not move about, I decided to add a 20-pound weight on top of a book on top of the placemat. So that way it really had time and force to kind of grip together. And now with everything all dry, it's just time now to go in and cut off that excess like I mentioned earlier. So I'm just doing so using scissors, and I'm cutting at the marks where the thread is attaching all of these pieces together. And as I suspected, as soon as I started cutting, they just started to pop right off. So I did end up having to just attach 2 of the spindles back onto the bottom of the box, which is why I didn't glue the whole thing down, just because I didn't want it to get super messy. And just to follow the continuing pattern, I just placed both of those reeds using a little bit of hot glue. And it's not the perfect solution, but when the box is covered, you can't even tell. And I was thinking, oh, it would be so cool if these were all white. And then I did a scrap piece, which I always want to tell you guys, do it off to the side first, or do it on a scrap piece of whatever you're working on to see if you like it before you apply it to your project, because it honestly looks so much better this way. For our second thrift flip, I'm going to share with you guys how you can make this framed plaster art. Now, I'm not gonna get super crazy about the plaster part because honestly, guys, I've seen everybody on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram do this replication. So literally all I did was I found a pretty large print at the Thrift. I painted it white just using some white acrylic paint. You can use whatever paint, wall paint, whatever is going to cover that picture is fine. Or if you want to go to Michael's and just buy a frame there that you don't have to treat or do anything to, that's also totally fine. And for the spackle, I bought this one on Amazon. I'll make sure I link it. I used the entire thing of spackle for this canvas, and this canvas is quite large. It's 47 by 30, which is a nice size canvas. So for Michael's, this would be upwards around $40, $50, and I only spent $15. And to apply the spackle, I'm just doing so using a putty knife or a spackle knife, whatever you want to call it, and just spreading it all around with no rhyme or reason, just until the entire thing is covered. And you guys already know, if you've been following me, that I have very minimal taste. I don't like a lot of busy things in my house. And so I just left it the color that the spackle was. I didn't treat it, I didn't paint it, I didn't do anything to it. But if you want a more vibrant sort of plaster art, you can absolutely add whatever color you want to the plaster and then apply it. And so this is where people generally stop. And for me, it just felt unfinished. So I decided to make a frame for it, and I wanted to make a floating frame. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to do this. So with the art essentially done, you're just now going to build pretty much a box around the art that you just made. And I just picked up some 1x2s at Home Depot, and the best way to describe the measurement, I'm not going to give you numbers because it will totally depend on how big your art is. So when you're doing your measurements, you're going to want to account for a couple things. Because I'm not mitering my edges, which means making them come to a corner, I'm pretty much laying one into the other. So you're going to want to account for the depth of the 1x2s on the top and the bottom to fit in the left and the right side, as you can see with these little arrows here. And then you also, because you want it to be a floating frame, you want to account maybe like 1/8 of an inch gap around the perimeter of the artwork, separating the art from the actual frame. Because I am a visual learner, it's helpful for me to kind of lay things out as I'm doing them. So after I made my markings, I kind of just laid it out in the rectangle shape that's going to go around the art, put the art inside of the box that I created, and then I made my cuts. And I think that that is very helpful if you're a visual learner like me. Then I just took the miter saw and I cut where I made my markings, and I used a speed square, I don't know if I mentioned that, to make sure the line was super straight. With all the pieces cut, I'm just using these corner brackets. You can pick these up from the hardware store. We already had these from my father-in-law, and now I'm just applying that same wood glue that I used in the first project, and I'm applying it to those corners. So as you can see, the corners aren't mitered. They're just laying one into the other. But if you are like really good with woodworking, feel free to miter those corners and I'm sure it will come out great. The corner brackets are really helpful to make sure you're getting a perfect 90-degree angle every single time. And just to ensure that, I did take out the speed square, lay it in that corner to make sure that that was the case. And my husband got a new toy. He got a nail gun, so he decided to bust that out. So he did 2 nails on each corner, or you could just use hammer and a nail. Either one will work just fine. So that's really it. The frame is essentially done. Now it's just time to let that wood glue solidify. I let it dry overnight. It says you only need like 20 minutes, I'm pretty sure. So once it was dry, I just had to remove those corner brackets from every single corner, and I needed to sand off where we wood filled over the nail gun holes. You can use whatever wood filler that you have. We have one that you mix with water so it doesn't go bad, but whatever you have, I'm sure fine. So I'm just using my orbital sander and I'm sanding off all of that wood filler, so then that way when I go to stain it, you don't have any of these like patchy white marks. And then again, using that same stain that we used in the first DIY, we're going to use it again on this one. It's in Early American. And after the stain had dried, it was just time now to add these little pieces of cardboard on either side of the frame. So that way it's 1/8 of an inch and it really does look like the art is floating within this frame. So the art is done, the frame is done. Now we need to combine the two, and we're going to be doing so using some mending brackets. You can get these for a few dollars at the hardware store. They're really inexpensive. I had these on hand, so that's why I decided to use these ones. It doesn't matter if it's hanging off the side. No one's going to see it when it's up on the wall. So after I decided where it was going to be best for each mending bracket to go, I just marked it with a pencil and then just used my drill, and I drilled in some screws. And we ended up doing 2 mending brackets on the left and the right side, so 4 altogether. And this is how our floating frame plaster art turned out. We are going to be upcycling this globe. This globe was kind of expensive for what it was, honestly. It was $5.99 and you can't even see any countries on it. So I feel like that was kind of overpriced in my opinion, but it is what it is. So it didn't really matter because I'm just going to be painting over it anyway, but still, I still feel like that's overpriced. And on top of that, as I'm turning it around, I noticed that it's cracked. So I had to fix that first before I did anything else. And I just did so with hot glue and it seemed to do the trick. It didn't seem like it was like actually missing a piece. It just seemed to be cracked. So I just applied a little bit of hot glue to that seam there and then just held it together real tight. And because we're giving the globe kind of like a textured effect, you can't even tell when it's all over. So I'll show you guys exactly what I did there. Now that we have repaired our globe, it's just time now to remove the globe from the structure that's holding it upright because I wanted to paint that part gold, and in order to get a really clean finish, I didn't want to risk kind of getting a bunch of gold paint on the actual globe itself. So to separate the globe, all you need to do is take either end and just kind of twist in the opposite direction, and it should just kind of pop right off like it did just there. And once you're able to unscrew both of those from either side, you just kind of pull out that prong that's holding the globe upright. So now with the actual globe removed, I felt like it was just going to be so much easier to spray paint because now all that I have to tape down is just the base, which is super simple. I could have decided to paint that gold, but I actually liked that it was a wood color, so I decided to leave that part alone. And now that the gold spray paint has all dried, it's just time now to reattach the pieces together, and you're really just attaching it the same way that you disassembled it. So you're just going to kind of slide the globe back on and then screw the bottom piece together. For some reason, it was so much easier to take off than it was to put on. I don't know if I just like couldn't get the coordination right, but I was able to do it in the end, so don't give up. And I do want to mention that while the gold spray paint was drying, I gave the globe itself just one like matte cover of like black spray paint just to kind of even things out a bit. And before I like glue anything down or paint anything down, I want to make sure that I'm able to get a really clean finish with my acrylic paint. So I'm doing everyone's little favorite trick right now, which is to add baking soda or baking powder to acrylic paint just to kind of make it thicker and give it a bit more texture. And I decided to use 2 colors to make it look like it could be the shadow of a country sort of a thing, but I wasn't like super methodical about this in any way, like trying to map anything out. So it was, again, just to give it a little bit more dimension. For the application part, I kind of went back and forth with this, and I'm glad I ended up going in the direction that I did because normally I'm like, yes, use a paintbrush or a sponge. But I kind of wanted the fibers from a cotton ball to kind of adhere to the paint to stick on to the globe, just to give it, again, more texture. And this actually worked out really well, so I would definitely recommend this. If you don't have a sponge or if you don't have any paintbrushes, definitely a cotton ball could be your saving grace. And I just applied one pretty even layer all throughout the entire globe, just to make sure everything was really well covered, especially the part that it had cracked. I applied a little bit more paint in that section, but everywhere else it was just one even application and it was dry in 20 minutes. And this is how we salvaged this left for dead globe, and it looks so much more beautiful now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked today's video, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button because I post home decor and DIY content every single Sunday, and I hope I see you guys next Sunday.